The village of Ogbele was not marked on any modern map. Tucked between thick forest paths and bordered by a river that ran silver at night, it was a place of traditions, of whispered superstitions and long-forgotten gods. And right at the heart of this forgotten village stood a man no one dared to question, Dr. Ifa. He was tall, wiry, with graying dreadlocks always hidden beneath a well-worn hat. Most of the villagers had never seen his eyes without the round-lensed spectacles he wore. He had been in Ogbele for as long as anyone could remember. Some claimed he had been trained abroad. Others whispered that he had no formal education at all, that his knowledge came from somewhere older, darker. The villagers feared him, but they also needed him. For decades, he had been the only medical lifeline in Ogbele. No matter the sickness, no matter the hour, Dr. Ifa would be there. He didn't ask for payment, only insisted that families follow his instructions exactly, especially when it came to childbirth. And when the women went into labor, especially at night, they would be taken to his compound, a place surrounded by tall bamboo fencing and hidden shrines. No man had ever entered, not even the fathers of the children. When the mothers returned, pale and trembling, they held their babies with strange silence in their eyes. They never spoke of what they saw. Some said it was just the trauma of childbirth, others the heavy herbs Dr. Ifa administered. But a few elders, those old enough to remember different days, had begun to grow suspicious. There were whispers that some babies never came home, that sometimes the wails of newborns would echo into the forest long after the mothers had been carried back. One such elder was Mama Adanma, the midwife before Ifa came. She no longer delivered babies. Ifa had made sure of that. But she watched and she remembered. One evening she sat on her bamboo stool by her smoky hearth, tracing patterns in the dust with her bent finger. Her granddaughter Ndali sat near, crushing leaves for a soup. "Ndali," the old woman said, her voice cracking like dry firewood. "Do you remember what I told you about the river and the twins?" Ndali nodded slowly. "You said in the old days, twins were left for the spirits." "Yes." Mama Adanma stared into the fire. "But Ifa, he does not leave them. He takes them, and not just twins anymore." Ndali shivered. She was 18, unmarried, and already feeling the pressure of becoming a woman in Ogbele. The thought of giving birth under Dr. Ifa's care made her stomach twist. But Mama Adanma was not done. Her eyes gleamed now with something fierce. "They think he heals. They think he helps. But I saw what he buried behind his house, and I'm going to find out what he does with those babies." Outside, a goat bleated in the distance, and the air thickened. From the direction of Dr. Ifa's house, a wind began to blow, even though the sky was clear. A wind that carried with it the faintest cry of a newborn, and something else. A low guttural chant, like the voice of a man speaking with the tongues of spirits. If only they knew. The next morning, the air in Ogbele was heavy with heat, though the sun had not yet broken past the tree canopy. Birds chirped restlessly, and even the goats moved with caution. In the village square, a gathering had formed around the well. It was not market day, yet the villagers were murmuring in low tones, casting furtive glances toward Dr. Ifa's compound. A baby had died in the night, or so they were told. The child had belonged to Chisholm, a shy 17-year-old girl whose parents claimed she had gone into labor late in the evening. As was tradition, she was carried to Dr. Ifa's home, and hours later returned without a child and with swollen, tearless eyes. He said the baby was born with no breath. Father muttered to the gathered crowd. He said it was fate, but the villagers had heard something strange the night before. A baby's cry that had lasted long past midnight, then suddenly stopped, as if a cloth had smothered it. Mama Adanma, wrapped in a faded orange wrapper and her staff in hand, stood at the edge of the crowd. She watched Chisholm from a distance, noting how the girl would not meet anyone's eyes. Her body language screamed of secrets. Mama Adanma turned and made her way to the forest path, dragging Ndali along behind her. "Where are we going, Mama?" Ndali asked, glancing nervously around. "To find the truth," the old woman muttered. "Tonight, we go behind the compound. But first, we visit the one who used to serve him." They walked for half an hour until they reached a mud house at the edge of the village, half swallowed by forest vines. A red cloth hung above the door, sign of someone who had left the spiritual path. Inside was Ogbele, once an assistant to Dr. Effa. He was a shadow of a man, gaunt and jittery, as if hunted by things only he could see. When he saw Mama Adanma, his eyes widened in recognition and fear. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, glancing over their shoulders. "He'll know." "He doesn't know yet," Mama Adanma said firmly. "But he will." "Tell me what he does with the babies." Ogbele's lips trembled. "You think it's just herbs and chants? You think he's a man?" Ndali clutched her grandmother's hand. "I saw it with my own eyes," Ogbele continued, voice breaking. "When the mothers sleep under his tea, he takes the babies, some he buries, some he gives to the creature beneath his floor." Mama Adanma frowned. "Creature?" "He calls it Eleque," Ogbele whispered. "An old god. From the days before. Even your time. It lives beneath his house. It feeds on purity, on breath, on blood." Silence fell. Ndali looked to her grandmother in disbelief. "He sacrifices them?" "Yes," Ogbele said, tears now running down his cheeks. "And the ones he doesn't sacrifice? He marks, for something worse." Mama Adanma turned, her face dark with purpose. "Then tonight we watch, and if it is true, we end him." As they left Ogbele's hut, a sudden gust of wind blew through the trees, knocking over a wooden mortar. Birds scattered. From far away, in the direction of Dr. Aoife's compound, came the distant sound of drums, slow, rhythmic, and haunting. "Theet?" Old gods were awake. Night in Ogbele had always been a time for silence, for locking doors and keeping lamps low. But on this night the shadows seemed thicker, as though the moon itself was afraid to shine too brightly. Ndali and Mama Adanma moved like whispers through the underbrush, wrapped in dark cloth and with charcoal smeared beneath their eyes to hide their glow. They had waited until the drum stopped and the village lay quiet. Now it was time to witness what the village doctor truly did with the newborns. They crouched beneath the tall bamboo fence that surrounded Dr. Aoife's compound. Mama Adanma had once worked inside these walls as a healer, and she knew the places where the fence was weakest. Quietly, she pushed aside a loosened panel, and they slid in like spirits. Inside, the compound was lit by a strange blue flame that hovered in mid-air. No wick, no oil, just fire, alive and watching. Ndali swallowed her fear. They moved toward the back of the compound where a round hut stood, Dr. Aoife's birthing house. No windows, no doors, only an entrance covered with thick black cloth. They knelt behind a cluster of banana trees just meters away. Suddenly the cloth lifted. Out stepped Dr. Aoife. He looked different now. His usual calm, detached expression was replaced by something deeper, darker. His dreadlocks were tied with red cords, and across his chest were painted symbols, ancient, pulsating with energy that seemed to bend the air around him. Behind him, he dragged something, a bundle wrapped tightly in white cloth. A baby. Ndali gasped, but Mama Adanma clutched her arm hard. Dr. Aoife walked to a round stone slab near the center of the compound. With careful precision, he placed the baby on it. Then he began to chant, not in Yoruba, not in Igbo, not in Hausa. It was a language neither of them had heard before, guttural and ancient. The ground beneath them seemed to hum. The stone slab cracked open. From within, a hand emerged, thin, long, black as charcoal, with fingers like branches. It reached toward the child. "No!" Ndali sprang up before Mama Adanma could stop her. Dr. Aoife turned sharply, eyes glowing an unnatural red. "You shouldn't be here," he growled. "You don't understand the balance I maintain." Mama Adanma stood beside her granddaughter now, firm as a tree. "You call this balance, sacrificing children, feeding old gods? Dr. Aoife stepped back as the hand withdrew into the ground. You think you're saving them? This village would be ashes if I did not give Elekwe what it demands. The spirits you abandoned still walk these lands, Adanma. You chose herbs. I chose power. You chose evil, she spat. Ndali, filled with courage she never knew she had, stepped toward the stone slab. The baby was crying now, alive. Whatever dark ritual had begun, it hadn't finished. Suddenly, Dr. Aoife raised his hand, and the earth itself seemed to ripple. But before he could complete whatever incantation he intended, Mama Adanma flung a pouch from her wrapper. It burst mid-air, scattering white ash and bitter herbs, protection powder from the river priestess. Dr. Aoife screamed, clutching his face as smoke rose from his skin. The blue flame above flickered and died. The baby wailed louder, and the entire compound seemed to shudder. The slab sealed shut with a thunderous crack. Silence fell. Dr. Aoife lay motionless. Mama Adanma gathered the baby in her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. We will end this, she whispered, even if it cost me the rest of my life. As they slipped out of the compound, carrying the saved child with them, Ndali glanced back. Dr. Aoife's body was gone. Only a smear of black remained on the stone. But from the depth of the earth, a soft voice whispered, in that same haunting tongue, the pact is not broken. The price will be paid. By morning, the village of Ogbele was buzzing with tension. Word had spread, first as rumors, then as whispers no one dared speak too loudly. A baby believed to be dead was alive and cradled in the arms of Mama Adanma, and Dr. Aoife's compound was quiet, eerily so. Ndali stood in the center of the village square, exhausted, her eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. The baby, whom they now called Chikere, meaning God created, had survived the night. But strange things had begun to happen. The chickens in 3 compounds lay dead without a scratch. 2 women miscarried without explanation. The river had turned muddy black near the edge of the forest, and most terrifying of all, the talking drum in the shrine hut had begun beating on its own, calling out the same name over and over. Elekwe. 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 Something was disturbed, Mama Adanma said gravely, stirring a pot of protective herbs. The sacrifice was interrupted. The old one beneath the earth is angry. But we saved the child, Ndali protested. Isn't that good? Mama Adanma looked at her with deep, weary eyes. Child, you think the gods care about right or wrong? They care about balance, and Aoife had struck a bargain we do not fully understand. Across the village, the elders gathered in secret at the Obi, the meeting hut. They included Chief Orji, a powerful man who always dismissed old fears, and Elder Namdi, who still wore the marks of the ancient ways on his chest. They sat in a tight circle as Adanma was brought in. You broke sacred ground, Chief Orji accused her. Dr. Aoife may have had strange ways, but he kept this village safe. Mama Adanma didn't flinch. And at what cost? Our children? Our souls? Elder Namdi, his voice raspy with age, asked, Did you see the being? Saw its hand, Adanma replied, and I heard it speak. A chill went through the room. Then Namdi said something that shook them all. The last time Elekwe was named was 50 years ago, when the river dried, the trees burned, and 20 villagers died in a single moon cycle. The priest then made a pact, 1 child every 3 months, to feed the soil to bind the spirit. The room went silent. And Aoife, Mama Adanma whispered, kept that pact? Yes, Namdi admitted. Until now. Suddenly, the earth beneath them trembled. A soft growl echoed from under the meeting hut floor. Dust fell from the rafters. The elders gasped. We don't have time, Adanma said urgently. Elekwe has awakened fully. We must seal him. How? Asked Orji, now visibly afraid. There is only one way to banish an ancestral god, she said, with the blood of the pact holder, or his heir. But Dr. Aoife is gone, Namdi said. Vanished. And Ndali, listening from outside, felt a cold realization crawl over her skin. The child they rescued, Chikere, was not just a random infant. She was marked, not for death, but as Efa's spiritual heir. She was the one Elekwe would come for next. That night, Ndali dreamt of the stone slab, but it was no longer closed. In her vision, it stood open and a figure in a tattered doctor's coat emerged. His face was a skull. In his arms he held a knife made of bone, and behind him 1,000 babies cried in unison. Ndali woke up screaming. The dream lingered in Ndali's mind all morning. Ifa's skeletal face, the bone knife, the cries of 1,000 babies. She had never believed in visions before, but now she did. Every part of her being told her the truth. Elekwe was coming, and he wanted Chikere. The villagers had started to turn. They no longer trusted Mama Adanma or Ndali. Fear was taking root. People crossed the road to avoid them. Children were told not to look them in the eye. The worst came when Chisholm's mother, still grieving, approached the compound shouting that Adanma had brought a curse. "They stole my grandchild from the spirit world," she cried. "That child should not live." The village was fracturing. Meanwhile, beneath the soil, something stirred. That evening, Ndali and Adanma prepared. There would be no more waiting. "If we don't act," Adanma told her, "this entire village will become Elekwe's shrine. The crops will rot. The sky will darken. Every child born will belong to the god. How do we stop him?" Ndali asked, clutching a gourd of protective oil. "We must enter the sacred ground where the first pact was made," Adanma said. The Cave of Whispers. No one had entered the cave in decades. It was considered forbidden. But Adanma, with her knowledge of ancient rites, remembered the path. They wrapped the child, now sleeping, in thick cloth and set out at dusk. Through the forest they moved, past the fallen iroko trees and silent termite mounds. Owls hooted as if warning them. The deeper they went, the colder it became, though the air remained still. Finally, they reached the mouth of the cave, dark as a void, its walls pulsing faintly with symbols etched in ancient blood. Ndali hesitated. "Is this where the pact was made?" "Yes," Adanma replied. "This is where the priest of Ogbele offered the first newborn to Elekwe, and this is where we must end it." They stepped in. The silence inside was absolute. Even their footsteps made no sound. As they moved deeper, the walls seemed to close in, breathing slowly, like lungs. Then they reached a chamber at the center, circular and glowing dimly from torches that lit themselves as they entered. There stood the altar, carved from black stone, slick with age. And there stood Dr. Ifa, or what was left of him. He was neither living nor fully dead. His body was there, yes, face human, but his hands were elongated, claws of bone. His chest pulsed with something inside, as if his heart had been replaced by fire. "I warned you," he said, voice no longer his own. "The pact was not mine, it was the village's. I was only the hand." "Then let the hand be cut off," Mama Adanma said, raising her staff, but Ifa smiled. "You brought the child to me." Ndali gasped. Chikere was floating in the air, lifted by an unseen force. "No!" she screamed, lunging forward. But Ifa raised his palm. The walls of the cave roared, and a creature began to rise from the altar, a giant, serpent-like being of smoke and ash, its face like a melting skull. "Elekwe, you cannot stop what was promised," Ifa cried. "This child is the heir. Her blood will feed him for 100 years." Adanma threw her gourd of oil, and it burst in the air, showering the demon in liquid light. Elekwe shrieked, folding in on himself. But the ritual was still ongoing. Ndali remembered the bone knife from her dream. She looked at Efa and saw it, tucked in his belt. Without thinking, she sprinted, grabbed it, and slashed across his chest. Efa screamed, his form breaking apart like paper in fire. The smoke creature wailed. The altar cracked. Then silence. Chikere fell gently into Adanma's arms. The cave began to shake. Stones fell from the ceiling. "Go!" Adanma shouted. "Now!" They ran, the baby clutched tightly as the entrance collapsed behind them. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the Cave of Whispers no longer existed. Only earth remained, fresh and undisturbed. Aoife was gone. Elekwe was sealed, but a scar had been left, on the land, and in the heart of the girl who had fought a god. Ogbele was quiet the next morning, not with peace, but with uncertainty. The villagers awoke to find the forest path to the Cave of Whispers gone, erased as though it had never existed. The air had changed too. It was heavier, thicker. Crops wilted overnight. The river stank of decay. The chickens refused to lay. Whispers turned into blame. The elders, once silent, now raised, their voices. At the village square under the great baobab tree, a council was summoned. Villagers gathered, faces tight with fear. "She brought back a cursed child," cried Chief Orji, pointing at Mama Adanma. "She broke the old pact. Now the land turns against us." Adanma stepped forward, holding Chikir in her arms, the baby wide-eyed and silent. "You blame me," she said, voice calm but firm, "because I pulled back the veil and showed you the truth. You offered your children to a beast for decades, and now that the beast is gone, you're afraid to face the price." A murmur passed through the crowd. Ndali stood beside her grandmother, defiant. "We sealed Elekwe. The pact is over. What you're seeing now is the sickness of what was done, not the punishment of what was undone." But the villagers were not ready for such truth. Fear made them desperate. "Then let the child be exiled," shouted an old woman. "Let the curse leave with her." Others began to nod. Mama Adanma clutched the baby tighter. "You would exile the innocent and keep the guilty buried in silence?" she snapped. "Then nothing will change. This land will rot under your cowardice." From the edge of the crowd, Elder Anamdi stepped forward, limping. He had not spoken in days. "She speaks the truth," he said quietly. "What happened was wrong. I was part of it. Long ago, I was there when the pact was made, and I stayed silent as it continued. But no more." The crowd stilled. He faced Adanma. "What must we do to cleanse the land?" Adanma's voice softened. "The earth needs mourning. The spirits of the taken must be honored. We must name them, one by one." A ceremony was planned. That night, torches lit up the village square. A list of lost children was read. Mothers stepped forward and poured palm wine into the earth, whispering the names of the babies they never held. Fathers beat drums with tears on their cheeks, and as the final name was spoken, the river flowed clear again. The sky opened. A breeze passed through the trees, clean and warm. In the corner, Chikir gurgled softly in Adanma's arms, but even as the village began to heal, Ndali couldn't shake a sense of unease. In the dream that followed, she stood at the old altar again. It was buried, broken, but something pulsed underneath, slow, steady, like a heartbeat beneath stone. A whisper brushed her ear. "The air still lives." She woke with a gasp. Outside, Chikir was staring at the stars, her tiny hand raised, as though she remembered something. Years passed. Ogbele changed. The earth grew green again. Children laughed freely. The whispers that once haunted the village faded, though never entirely forgotten. Rituals were replaced with remembrance. Shrines gave way to schools. Time, it seemed, was a healer, but some wounds did not scar. They stayed open, quiet, watching. Chikir grew. By the age of 5, she could walk alone into the forest and birds would land on her shoulders. At 7, she whispered to the river and fish gathered at her feet. By 10, she no longer fell ill, no matter the weather. Her eyes, always wide, now carried an unsettling depth, as though she saw both the present and the time before time. Ndali loved her fiercely. She had become a sister, a daughter, a mystery all in one. But Mama Adanma, she watched the girl with sacred caution. She is marked, she would whisper to herself, mixing herbs, not evil, not blessed, just unfinished. Then one day Chikere spoke words no one had taught her. It was late evening. The village lanterns had just been lit. Ndali sat plaiting the girl's hair when Chikere looked to the moon and said, in that same forgotten tongue, "He still waits." Ndali froze. "Who, my love?" Chikere looked up, smiling gently. "The one who lies beneath." Chills spread through Ndali's arms. That night, she told Adanma everything. The old woman nodded, her eyes distant. "I have feared this. Part of Alekwe's essence survived in her. It was never about death, child. It was about continuity. He did not want sacrifice. He wanted a vessel, a voice. She's not possessed," Ndali said quickly. "She's still her. Yes. But one day she will have to choose which part of her she listens to." The next morning, Mama Adanma was gone. All she left behind was a gourd, sealed with wax, and a scroll. In it she had written, "When the time comes, let her drink from this. It will silence the voice if she chooses it. But she must choose. Not you, not me, not the village." Years passed. Ndali raised Chikere with love, knowledge, and truth. She taught her the story of Dr. Afa, of the pact, of the cave, and of the god beneath the soil. Chikere listened. Then, on her 18th birthday, she climbed the hill outside Ogbele and sat where the altar had once been. She held the gourd in one hand. In the other, the scroll. The wind whispered, "Child of bone, child of ash. Will you speak for me?" She sat in silence for a long time. Then, she uncorked the gourd, and she drank. The earth beneath her feet shook, briefly. A wind blew across the plains, but no shadow rose. No god returned. When she returned to the village, she carried no darkness, only peace.